live. Welcome everybody for another episode of Appropriate Culture. I have another fantastic guest here, and he's a little bit about him before we get started. Well, Eric has been celebrating over 17 years with Microsoft. Eric Kamont has established a reputation for enabling customers and partners worldwide to find success through incubating cutting-edge technologies such as mixed reality and IoT. Combined with industry background across manufacturing and retail, Kamont brings to bear a point of view that crosses both the technical and business landscape. Prior, he spent time in the AEC and gas turbine industries, landing progressive and startup initiatives in both. Self-funding his collegiate pursuits, Kamont holds a Bachelor of Science in Information Technology. In his spare time, he can be found competing in obstacle course races, working on his third degree black belt, volunteering with the YMCA, honing his chef skills, and spending all the time possible with his amazing family. Eric, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great, Lucas. Thanks for reading the bio and having me on today. Thanks a lot, man. It's been a long time. Hope you're doing well.
It really has, man. It's so good to see your face. Good to hear your voice. Honestly, I mean, I know you a little bit. I know a little bit about the fact that you're pretty active outside of work.
Yeah.
And I also would love to touch on that. But I guess first things first, I do know you're a father. How was Father's Day?
I am a father. Father's Day was definitely entertaining. I've got I'm the proud father of two boys. I have an 11 and 7-year-old. So two sons that look and have a lot of energy like me. It's full on all day, nonstop. So it was good. I mean, it's Father's Day is I can tell them, I'm like, just in case you guys are ever curious, thank you for letting me be your dad, first off, because I got to be graced with their presence. But Father's Day was great, so thanks for asking, man.
Yeah, man, of course. I mean, honestly, it's I had the pleasure of speaking with my dad for about an hour or so, which was weirdly the same time that his episode came out. I didn't even try to do that on purpose. That was not a marketing move. It just happened. Yeah, no, man, I'm so grateful for father figures. I mean,
and where is he? Where does he live?
He's in Brazil.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you had to do the whole time zone and obviously
they're like 5 hours ahead. But yeah, no, he's back in Brazil with my mom. And no, things are great over there. As far as I can tell, seems like everything, the whole world had to experience the COVID situation. And so for the first time ever, we had people in every single country, everybody's lives got thrown upside down in one way or another. But it seems like things are getting back to normal over there, so to speak.
That's good.
How are things over where you're at?
Things are great. I mean, like I live in North Carolina, and depending on whatever your perspective is of politics, there's portions of the southeastern United States that either didn't believe in COVID or whatever, and
right.
We were living where we live. We were graced. Nobody's gotten sick. My family, we didn't lose anybody close to us. In fact, nobody in my close proximity. I've had friends who had it, but they didn't even know they had it. So, we've been blessed, haven't really been negatively impacted. In fact, I'm working more than I had been. My boys, the biggest impact, I think, for us was the school, was the idea that my boys were shut out of school for the better part of, probably over a year. And so that was hard. I mean, it was just like, but on the same token, for me, I was travel for work. I mean, I've been Microsoft 17 years. I think I've traveled 15 out of the 17 years, and I'm usually flying somewhere between 50 and 100,000 miles a year. Like that's just been how it's been.
Bananas.
And
crazy.
Yeah. And so I go, this year, like I've spent more time than I probably will with them in their entire life, like face to face. Like it wasn't like Dad's home and I work from home and I'm here. It was like literally you saw me 24/7 for like 16 months.
Yeah.
And so, my wife and I have seen more of each other than we have in our entire relationship. And so it's funny when I look back and go, there's a lot of places where things went wrong, but man, to have had the opportunity to have so much time, I mean, it's a silver lining on the cloud for sure.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, I agree with you. Sort of, in a weird way, a blessing in disguise in some situations if you know how to adapt.
Yep.
And for the people who don't know, that's how we know each other. Is I used to work at Microsoft, and that's actually how we got to work with each other and actually get to know each other.
Absolutely.
And so a lot of my traveling, I would see you popping in and out, and We cross paths all the time.
Yep.
And so I'm now long gone, but you're still there. Fill
Yeah.
me in on what you're focusing on right now with the team and what's going on.
Well, it's great. Yeah. So obviously we work together. It wouldn't just be our great hairstylists that we share. No, I'm kidding.
You know what I'm saying?
The idea that you were on the Hololens team, I was on the Hololens team. And so, yeah, I've been on the Hololens team now going on like over 6 years, which is just kind of
Awesome.
bananas. I mean, and I know you were around back before it even, I think, launched. And so so was I. And it was just crazy to take this, holographic computer, create this market from scratch and be participative in this like roller coaster. And so, yeah, I mean, in that amount of time, I've had just blessing to be so involved in creating markets and working with partners, which is where I spend a bunch of my time, is on our partner community, right? Microsoft is successful not just because of our customers, but because of our partner community, and creating and fostering this relationship with partners that can help build solutions in mixed reality. So that's what I do day in and day out. But I mean, we've got our second generation product, HoloLens 2, came out about 2 years ago, a year and a half ago now. I mean, we've got adoption stories that are bananas. I mean, back in the early days, I know you remember this, we were talking about Case Western and NASA and all these other fun things. I mean, and now you've got like lots of people replicating it. We've had people like Mercedes that are so focused on using it. Like if you in the United States, if you buy a Mercedes, odds are if it go get serviced, there'll be some guy with a HoloLens in the back service room using it right now to work on your car, which is cool. So they did a big ad on TV with it. We did a whole bunch of things with Lockheed Martin, where they're now, working on the Orion spacecraft, which is supposed to help go to Mars, right? So we had this big story. We've got Case Western, who finally released it. So starting in the enrolling class of 2019, Case Western has a med school, for those people that don't know. And they had this vision going back like 6 years. They wanted to change the way they taught cadaver lab. And they figured, hey, we want to do it with holographic technology. Right. And cadavers are expensive and hard to come by, and there's a million other problems with cadavers. So they're like, hey, let's talk about making it a hologram, and that you can take apart and dissect and make bigger and make smaller and all these things. So in 2019, they actually had the first real class of doctors starting in med school that took holographic anatomy as an actual class. Damn. So you're going to have doctors graduate that are like, hey man, I learned medicine on HoloLens, which is just no longer an idea. It's actually happening. And then, of course, with COVID and all these schools that were sending everybody home, they were one of the few places that were able to keep touch with their students. They were able to send them all a HoloLens, and they kept up cadaver lab while they were at their house. So they didn't skip a beat with that anatomy class. And, again, if you're not at school and you don't have a cadaver in front of you, how are you going to do that? And they're like, oh, no problem. Here's a HoloLens, strap it to your face. And they didn't lose a beat being able to teach them and maintain continuity on their med school program. So it's been awesome to be working on this. And, our team's gotten bigger. We've got people all over the world. And it's just the amount of stories that come in where people are going, this has changed the way we're working. This has changed the way we're rethinking our business. It's just bananas. It's just bananas.
Yeah. I mean, you're all the members are sort of rushed back here, all the different events. And at the end of the day, it's I think the obvious thing people think about when they think about virtual reality is gaming and entertainment.
Yeah.
And that's a great, and that's a big part of it. But one of the parts that surprised me the most when I joined the team and really saw the scope of it all was that the damage in a good way that this is doing is, well, like you said, with all these different partners and all these different industries, and the amount of efficiency being created by having some of these applications starting up with them is, I mean, not only are we allowing circumstances to be new circumstances of learning, like you just said, everybody's going home, but they still get the exact same experiences they would have been getting in the classroom.
Yep.
But now things are sort of taking it to a whole new level where you could even see additional things you couldn't even see before in the traditional way of learning.
Correct. Absolutely.
And so, I mean, in regards to that, has there been any specific, well, I mean, let me whittle it down. Where do you see this going in the next 2 to 5 years for the average company? Like, do you see some sort of a separation happening between companies who decide to take this on, and in a certain percentage of them who are just sort of going to be slow to the game? How do you see things developing as this gets more popular?
It's an interesting question. I mean, to go back to your original, so the first comment you made, and I'll come back to like, where I see
Yeah,
this going. You
yeah,
talked about like entertainment. So I do think like, entertainment, video games, that consumer angle, I mean, is a super ripe space. We see it with, Pokemon Go and VR games, and Oculus Quest had this massive blowout over the holidays in terms of devices. But I feel like sometimes people think it's like an either or thing, right? Like either you're a gaming device or you're this tool that people use in the industrial setting, and you're allowed to be
right,
both. I mean, a laptop or a phone or a tablet can do both. It just so happens that like, in some of the price points, they're not super inexpensive yet, right? I mean, that's how technology works. I mean, it gets,
right,
people spend money and then it gets commoditized over time. So yeah, the industrial sector goes, yeah, the ROI is 10, 20, 100x of whatever we're spending. And so they're like, yeah, man, if this thing, I'm just making up numbers, but if it costs a
right.
million and I'm saving 10, it's like a no brainer. But you can't go to like, hey, do you want to make $1 million ROI at your house? Like it just doesn't
Right,
work,
right.
in terms of those different scales. So, but consumer will have to happen. I mean, it will come down the road, but it doesn't have to happen absent of also solving these industrial challenges,
Sure.
and getting all the innovation out of that then lead back to what happens. I mean, it's like the equivalent of like, hey, the military does all this investment and then it shows up in the private sector kind of stuff. You saw it with Velcro in NASA. Now it's 37 cents to go get Velcro. Back in the day, it was like hundreds of dollars to be able to get that technology because of where it lived. So to that end, like I think in the future, the technology has nowhere to go but up. I mean, it's still early days. I mean, it's still a nascent business, meaning like it's not like while we've talked about mixed reality or augmented reality or virtual reality for decades, right? Seen movies, it's been in
Right.
pop culture, it's been in books. Like to create a business market out of that whole thing, that's not easy, and it doesn't happen overnight. That takes years to get to
Yeah.
maturity. And I always have this joke where mixed reality, like on this futurism meter, like where this is Windows XP and this is going to Mars, like this is like MR for a long time was here and now it's maybe here. So instead of being the bleeding and leading edge, maybe now it's the fast followers. And so there's lots of companies. In fact, when we did there was a research paper that came out maybe a year and a half ago, that said about 87% of companies are doing something with mixed reality, some
Sure.
version of evaluation, whether they're just getting started all the way through deployment. So you're talking like more than 8 out of 10 companies are going, hey, we're playing with this.
Yeah.
So the question is, what are they doing? How well is it going? Are they finding value? At some point, it's going to be 10 out of 10.
Right.
And then that's when things really start happening. Instead of being in one department, it's now in an organizational division. Instead of a division, it's the whole company, right? Like it'll just get scale because the success is happening. And that'll be an evolution of not just Microsoft product, but anybody else out there in the marketplace. So
Right.
it's got a lot of places to go, for sure. We're not, the interest is very high. I mean, again, this is not just us, but you think about what people are trying to do with VR in healthcare, manufacturing, and in the defense sector, and retail. People want to shop differently. They want to build
Yeah.
buildings differently. They want to teach medicine differently. I mean, it's all over the place.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's always that concept that there's always some people who are ahead of the curve,
Yeah, exactly.
and the majority tend to follow the people who took the shot first and put the neck on the line. Um, and I mean, in regards of that, I mean, it seems like when it comes to HoloLens, so I was having this conversation with my friend Ricardo, who owns, was one of the co-owners of Chronos VR. And right now they're more focused on, it's like they're like an academy where they teach younger people how to start to code and create
That's cool.
ideas and the whole 9 yards. He worked at Microsoft
Okay.
before starting his company. In regards to AI, VR, or VR, or sorry, augmented virtual reality, HoloLens, what is HoloLens exactly when it comes down to these terms?
Great question. And I think it helps define like what are these things. We say AR, VR, MR. There's even
Right,
XR out there. so mixed reality is really like this really broad but generic definition of just a blending of the physical and these digital worlds together, right? And depending on like how much physical versus how much digital there is, you get more augmented than say virtual reality. That's kind of how it's like a spectrum is how mixed reality should be thought of. So in the case of augmented reality, the levers you're pulling are you're having more physical reality. So you're able to see the things around you. So the spaces, for example, and you might just be digitizing, for example, what I might see or what I might hear. But if you continue like digitizing things like the sense of touch or the sense of smell, and you get, maybe I'm creating the entire environment that you see. I'm not just adding things to what you see in the real world. You get more digital, you get more to the virtual reality world. So on one hand, you basically have something like HoloLens where I'm seeing the real world and I'm putting digital content into it that I can interact with. That's more like an augmented universe. And then the virtual universe is like Neo being plugged into the Matrix, right? He doesn't even know that he's in the Matrix and everything is digital, including reality. His whole 5 human senses are just digitized. And so generally today, most people, when they play with virtual reality, it's something what they call an occluded device, right? I can't actually see where I am, and it creates this entire spatial world. And maybe you're playing with haptics controllers, and maybe you're using your voice or whatever. And then in the case of something like HoloLens or like a Magic Leap or other devices out there, that are you're be able to create creating holographic objects that act like physical objects and they interact. So the idea that I could create a coffee table that's a hologram that acts just like a coffee table in the real world. I put a hologram on top of it, it stays there. If I knock something off a table, it doesn't go floating into the air, it falls to the ground because of gravity, right? It would act like it would be if it was a real object. That I think is to me, again, virtual reality has amazing power, but that idea of augmenting our universe, dude, that the power there is just bananas. Like you have the ability to do so many things. And I mean, think about like something as basic as like, oh, I'm going to build a new house, or I'm going to remodel my kitchen, and I want to see what it looks like, down to the granite countertops, like right where they're going to actually be. Holy crap. Like that's got so much potential, let alone going, I want to go do an operation on a patient and I want to see what the inside of their body looks like X-ray vision. I want to be able to overlay that and plan how I'm going to do surgery. Like that's got massive, I mean, people are working on this today, but I mean, that's like the power of like that augmented space. And of course, virtual reality is great because you don't have to have the physical world. You can just create the digital universe. You could be on Mars. You could be floating around in space. You could be at the bottom of the ocean. It doesn't matter. And frankly, leaving choice to the customers, flexibility. Hey, you want augmented? Use augmented. You want to use virtual, but they shouldn't be exclusive to one another. Like if you're in the virtual world and we want to have this conversation right now and I have an augmented device, you got a VR device, we should be able to do that. Like there shouldn't be anything stopping us because of the modality that we picked. You know what I'm saying? So that's to me is the power of mixed reality. We don't care what device you're on. It's all the same little universe. It just depends on, how much physical versus how much digital you wanted to have.
So I guess in more or less, this is really a full ecosystem that you shouldn't see it as like individual entities that are just different worlds, because it really does seem like this, this whole era of 5G and technology waves, they're trying to really connect it all together.
Yeah, I think the new word these days is like metaverse. If you've probably heard, like, I mean, just to your point, like the idea that these little universes of, these little networks of people will come together and that's the content is going to be king versus the device that you're engaging the content on. Right. You know what I'm saying? So like there's going to be a bunch of people that are going to be like, I love using a PC or a mobile device because it's 2 dimensions and I'm fine with that. And then there might be a scenario where they need to take that same content and upgrade it to 3-dimensional. Great. Is that 3-dimensional real? Is that 3-dimensional digitized? Does it matter? Like that, like all those things should just interact with one another, and the content and where the content is and how that is being embraced should be the king. But that's hard when, the equivalent I can make is we're building a bunch of cars with no roads and no gas stations and no electricity. Like you got to have the whole ecosystem, to your point, to make automotives and trucks all work together. You can't have them without roads and people and mechanics. Like you got to have a whole universe. And so that's where I think we are with mixed reality today, is it's not just one person playing. It's like all these people are investing in this tech. I mean, it's the venture capital business in Silicon Valley is going nuts investing in this tech. And you got lots of companies that are being, created. You got others that are being bought out. I mean, like you're just seeing this quick evolution. You got processors from people like Qualcomm that just keep coming out. So, I mean, it's here. It's not, I mean, it's here to stay for sure, and to evolve into something else. But, we'll be pontificating about what this will look like in 5 years when we have another one of these podcasts. Like, hey, remember back when we were building the Ford Model T of mixed reality and now it's amazing? Like, that's what it's going to be.
So you mentioned earlier about Oculus and how they had a great year,
Sure.
through 2020, because they're owned by Facebook, if I'm not mistaken, right? Are they the biggest player aside from Microsoft with HoloLens in the game right now?
So they're the de facto standard today in virtual reality technology, right? Because you had like HTC was really winning the mind share there. I think the power about the Oculus just happened to be that and this is where we started with HoloLens, was you could do holographic technology, but a lot of them were tethered. So you were like wired to a PC that had all this graphics processing. And so, and you even see this with Magic Leap today as an example, where it's like they're tether it to this puck. So that's where the processing happens. And so one of the challenges is like, hey, having an untethered holographic computer, that's a hard computer science challenge to solve. Well, the same holds true in VR. I mean, having an untethered virtual reality computer strapped to your face, which is what the Oculus Quest was solving for. And so, plus it's a price point that seems to make sense. I mean, they were like $300-400 or whatever. So, it's a reasonable product to get after. And then you saw businesses adopting it because they go, hey man, we can do some cool stuff with this. Right. But it wasn't meant to be an either or, right? They have a virtual reality thing that's really good at that. We have this holographic thing. There are people out there that make like monocular devices, for example, which is like basically a tablet that's like in a head mounted device. So that, again, it's all for different purposes. But yeah, I mean, I from what I read in the trade rags, it sounded like they had a good showing for the holiday season, so that's always nice. More confidence in the market.
I know they've been busy. I've done like some small contract work for them in regards to gathering data.
That's fun
for virtual reality stuff. So, but I mean, then again, Facebook is always up to stuff that people have no idea about most of the time.
I think that's a lot of tech companies are always doing
that goes for Microsoft as well. But I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but when we were traveling back in the day, a few years back when I was still on the team, were you mainly involved with the sales part of? Yeah, okay. And correct me if I'm wrong, you're one of the top sales people, if not the top salesperson on the.
I would no, I'm not. Like I wouldn't say the top sales guy. No. And it's that's some people listening going, wait, what? No. I happen to have been one of the earliest. Did not necessarily translate to necessarily the best, but yeah, there was two of us, this other guy and myself, that we were started the team 6 years ago, and it was he and I for like 2 years by ourselves. And then
I remember meeting him a couple times.
Yeah.
I forget his name, but yeah.
So we grew the team, and then 2 became 4, and then 4 became X, Y, and Z. Like we just grew. But then I took over. Like I switched, not that I don't have passion for customers, but I love working with partners. And so it was like an opportunity, like, hey, let's go build this other muscle in our business. And it's just cool. It's so cool to work. Like, it's like being a teacher. If you are the kind of person that finds success in making others successful, right? That is like one of the coolest things I love. It's like, yeah, I can do this myself, but who cares if I can't teach 50 other people to go do this magic thing, and they take it upon themselves, and then they can scale it out to the universe. Like, that's where the power lie is, in like scale. It's same thing. Like, it's like fitness, or it's like, green living or whatever. It's like, it's cool that the one guy has solar panels on his house. It's much cooler when they have 100 people have solar panels on their house, or whatever, like whatever the thing is, scaling it out through others. And so, yeah, I had that opportunity, and that's what I ended up doing. So, by no means am I the top sales guy.
The number one salesman on Microsoft for the whole world.
Yeah, that's great.
And so the reason why I bring that up is because regardless if you're number one or not, that was besides my point. What I was trying to come at was I always walked away when interacting with you, that your positivity was just always through the roof and like in the best way. And your energy was always super on point. And aside from just being in sales, I know I've come to find out that that is pretty much one of the number one ways for you to exceed in whatever it is that you're doing in life.
Yeah.
Walk me through it. Have you always been this way? Was there like a changing part in your life that sort of opened that up to you?
I mean, you're going to the deep recesses of my past. You get in there. So yeah, I mean, I'm generally an energetic, positive guy. Like my background in life is, I didn't come from a lot of fortune. I paid my way through college because we didn't have a lot of money growing up. My parents ended up getting divorced when I was in high school, and I had my struggles. I was bullied most of my life growing up. I was an overweight nerd. Like I was an easy target. I was a bit of a pacifist. And but I played sports. I had friends. That was like. My childhood was my childhood. Everybody has some weird adversity. I always call it like every superhero has an origin story. Like this is how it works, right? And nobody ever gets successful without some adversity pushing them through. And so I had my fair share. I grew up like just overweight my whole life. Like I was like that nerdy little kid with glasses who just I didn't care about how I looked or talked about, like it was just, I was your quintessential like marquee, look in the in the dictionary of an overweight fat nerd kid. I was like, there's he is, that's him. And I was generally a positive kid. Like I always found I found success through I played sports. I played soccer. I know you and I talked about this. I mean, I was goalkeeper for better part of 15 years. I couldn't run, but I could block balls.
That's what I'm saying.
It was no problem. So I was good. I had really good reflexes. They just put me in goal. They're like, don't worry about running. Just stop the ball by all means possible. So that's what I did. I got into computer technology when I was like little, like 7-8 years old. And then, and then I was in school and I took a break and I went up to my dad, had got remarried and was living back in New Jersey, which is where I grew up for like half my life. And, my dad had his first heart attack at 36 years old, like dead on the floor. They were resuscitating him. Weren't sure he was going to come back. He came back, right? Like magic. He came back to the universe. And then he had his second and third heart attacks, like 6-7 years later. Like he just gotten back into bad habits. And so I had moved up there to do some work and I was just living with him for a few months. And he's like, dude, you have to make me a promise. He's like, you got to like drop some weight, be around for your kids, be able to play with your kids when they're born. And I was like that wrecked me, because it was like, here's your dad. Like, I mean, you're just talking about talking to your dad. If your dad was like having a serious one-on-one, it's like, Lucas, I need you to make me a promise. And the promise is to do this. You're like, no, I'm good. No, you're like, I take that because I trust you and I love you. And yes, I'm going to make this change. Yeah. So I spent the better part of a year. I dropped 105 pounds. Like 315 to 205
in a year.
Like a year and a few months. And I did it healthily. Like I just exercised and ate good. It wasn't like a shock. And then like once the positive body image showed up, I was like that energy started coming out and that positivity and like, oh my God, anything's possible. Like if I can drop 105 pounds, what else could I possibly do? Right. Like it just seemed like opportunities were endless. And I was like going after jobs I had no reason to go after. I was going after girls I had no reason to talk to. I was trying like sports I shouldn't have been trying. And so I started taking martial arts and I was like, man, I'm going to go work at Microsoft one day. Like this is going to happen. Like I did it. Like I did all the things I wanted to do. And it's just this idea of like visualization for me. Like when I was dropping weight, I literally had this video that I would play every single morning on a treadmill. On a stair climber, I should say. First thing in the morning, I like when I first started, I could barely do 30 seconds on a stair climber, like without throwing up. And it was like, I'd watch his video and it was all about like the positive motivation of change. And it was just like visualizing, like, I can do this. I can do this. It's consistency over time, do the work. Like I can do this. And it like finally one day it just showed up and I had dropped like 70 pounds in like 6 months. And it was like,
Dang.
okay, now the momentum's there. You know what I'm saying? Like now you just keep rolling. And yeah, so like, and it's just funny because there's probably another alternate universe where that boy didn't make the same choice and he's living a different life. But so yeah, my positivity comes out because I'm like, I got a lot to be blessed for. Like, I could be dead, I could be overweight, there's 1,000 things that may never happen, and I've been blessed to have lots of those things. And so yeah, every day I wake up maybe a little achy, but generally pretty happy
still
with where
alive
things
and
are.
pretty,
Still, yeah.
Well, you look good, dude. I mean, I think I've seen your before and after.
Yep.
And if you're okay with it, I can even flash it on the screen, post edit, because I had my before and after, which I never really got too bad out of shape, but it was to a point where I wasn't happy with where I was at in life. And I think that's the point where I guess not all people end up changing it, but at one point when you just, enough is enough.
Exactly.
You're like, I can't keep doing this anymore. And I'm a firm believer that, one, there's no age that you can't turn it around. But then also, like my dad said in the last episode, will it be easy? No, not at all. You have to really want it. You got to actually show up every day. You will mess up. You will skip a workout and eat when you're not supposed to, and that's okay. Because that's not the end result. Life continues. And in regards to changing your life on an active, I know you mentioned some things, but looking at your page, I see a lot of the Ninja Spartan races. I have never partook in one of them, but I'm very interested. Fill me in on what that's all about.
So,
I see the medals in the back.
Oh yeah, there they are. Some medals in the back. So it's like it's this thing. So when I was growing up, every 7-8-year-old boy, superheroes, ninjas, like dinosaurs, they're all into like these things. But I could never take martial arts because I was so overweight. Like I couldn't like do the things. And so I made this promise. Like the first thing I wanted to do after I got fit was use my fitness for something. So I wanted to take martial arts, and so I did that for a number of years, and it was awesome. Like I learned a lot. And then
what kind of martial arts?
I took two. I took both Korean styles. Kuksul Wan was the first style I took, which is, and then I took Taekwondo, and I got black belts in both of those. And nice. I competed in Taekwondo, and I competed in Kuksul Wan, and like, it was great. Like I learned a lot of self-defense, but I got to hang out and have fun. Like I just, I'm a ninja. Like it's awesome. And so anyway, I did all these like, I had my kids and I was working out at home because I couldn't get to the gym anymore to take care of my boys. So I'm working out at home, and one of my friends comes over and goes, "Hey man, do you want to do one of these mud runs?" And I was like, "No, first off, I hate running, and B, I hate mud. So no, kiss my ass. I'm not doing this." And he's like, "Oh, come on, it'll be fun. It's short. It'll be us. It won't be that muddy. There's a beer at the end." I was like, "Fine, let's just go have some fun." So it was like obstacle course racing. It was a Spartan race, and they had it here in town. And so I go through this thing, and I was like, this is the hardest thing I'd ever done in my whole life. It was like 5 miles. It was like the most I'd ever run. It was bananas. And so then they're like, well, hey man, like there's like another one in a few months. It's a little bit longer, and it's in Asheville, North Carolina. It's like, oh, Asheville's fun. That'll be cool. We'll be out in the woods. We'll have some fun. That wrecked. yeah. That one wrecked me. That was like 8 or 9 miles. The elevation. It was just like, I got smashed. But you kind of go, hey, this is kind of cool. Like I'm kind of interested. And then they were like, well, if you do one of the short distance, the medium distance, and a long distance race, they call it a trifecta. We're like, well, we already did 2 out of the 3 races. We should do the 3rd race a few months later. So then we're like, okay, let's go sign up. And we had a bunch of people, and we did this long race. And so then I'm like, well, I did 3. So then the next year comes around. I was like, well, I bet you I could do some more. And so then, so now that was 2017, I think, when we started. Now it's 21. I mean, I've done like 55 races so far, and I've done all the shorties all the way up to the ultra distance, like 32 mile long. I think that I've done 3 of these 30 plus mile races. And it's just one of those things where it's just like, it's like the antithesis for as digital and technology focused as I am at work. It's like my analog unplugged balance, my yin for my yang, so to speak. And it's a blast. I mean, I brought people from Microsoft to races. They had a blast. And
do I know any of them?
Yeah, someone from our mixed reality team.
Okay.
But yeah, like and I've had my boys do them. They have kids versions of the races, and I love the idea of obstacle course racing as a mind challenge, right? Because it's like super sounds hard. You're outside, the elements are unknown. You got these. I'm like, the obstacles don't even matter. It's the idea that like you're challenging yourself with something. And again, it's this positivity. Like you could look at it and go, "There's no way I can do that." Well, how do you know? Did you even try? No.
Right.
All right, that was hard. Yeah, but did you die? No. Like you have this conversation, and then you figure out like people can do hard shit. Like that's the thing. Like I dropped 100 pounds. That was hard, but I hadn't done that in 25 years. Well, you get soft if you don't keep doing hard things,
Yeah.
picking up rocks and putting them down and like whatever, being outside. And so this idea of continually challenging myself mentally, physically, it makes me feel like not only alive, but like, I was put on earth to do something, use this. Like if I got to the end of my life, my body was like, it's in great shape. I did something wrong. Like I should, like when you trade in that car at the end of your life, it should like the wheel should fall off. Is like my point
Right.
of view, like it should be beat to shit, should have your initials carved in the side door. It's like, this was my car for my
You
life.
went hard.
Yeah. And I don't mean like hard in a, like, crazy lunatic guns blazing kind of thing, but just going like, I'm using my body for stuff. Like
Yeah.
that's why I spent all this time and blood and sweat losing weight, is so I could be fit, not to be fit, but to fit to live life. And that was the
Yeah.
thing that like, so yeah, the Spartan and then the ninja stuff was just like, again, that's my childhood just coming out as as an adult. Every grown man I know still has like an inner 12-year-old kid somewhere.
Oh, we all do.
Yeah.
We all do. And I mean, on a personal level, I've come to find out that the reason why I'm low-key addicted to my physical activities that I like to get into, everything from dancing to working out to bike riding. Now I just recently started doing a lot of bike riding.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, it's a good time. I mean, just popping
road
like an
road cycling
audiobook.
or mountain biking?
Road cycling. Yeah, just so
Nice.
far, I just had a friend's bike while I was in Florida. I started
Yep.
using her bike, but I'm probably gonna get one for myself soon.
Dude, that's
But
awesome.
I've come to understand that I'm at my best on my business life when that part is in check.
Oh, dude, absolutely.
When that part gets put aside, that's when automatically I start to experience a sort of an unevenness balance about life. And at this point, I'm convinced that like you start off. I mean, you don't have to start off your day with a workout if you feel like do it later in the day, but having that part, like you said, where it's 100% more or less unplugged, it's you and your body and your mind, and pushing yourself gives you this sort of, well, one, natural mind rush, and your body just sort of cleanses itself.
Yep.
But what you like what you do, like what you said, is you start to build sort of that mental callus of toughness. And if you've done one thing that's hard, you did another thing that's hard, now you got a personal PR on this event, and you
Exactly.
start to build that natural confidence, which is what I like to think is the best kind of confidence, where you actually earned it through
Yeah.
experience.
Yep.
And so if you were to send a message out there to any person, no matter what age, but they've been struggling with their weight and health, what would be your advice to them?
Well, that struggles with weight and health and things like that are they're multifaceted. Like I wasn't fat by accident. Like, I mean, like I had, a lot of, I always use this comment, like, I ate my feelings. I mean, that's common. Like when you talk about safety, or I need to feel safe. And how do you do that? You create this envelope around you. So and it's not an easy thing. Like there's people that have eating challenges, both on sides, like people eat too much and people don't eat enough, like that anorexic body image thing. And so, the thing I would say for anybody there is to not downplay your, to me, it's two pieces. One of which is to get help. And that doesn't have to be like a therapist, but like to find, and I don't mean just walk into a gym and start pumping iron. Like there's got to be this catalyst. You have to make a decision on like what your why. Like, I mean, Simon Sinek talks about this, but one of my friends who is just an unbelievable like athlete and with his mind, he's like, your why has to be bigger than your excuses. And when that switches, that's the moment stuff starts changing. And so if you've been struggling with weight, you might have like a regulatory problem or a thyroid challenge, or you might, again, might have emotional things. Like those are things that should get evaluated and solved. But, you know, there's also like people are lazy, or it's a matter of convenience, or it's a matter of like, I never walked into a gym till I was 19 years old. Like I had no idea what I was doing, you know, and it's freaky when you're walking in there with guys that are pumping 400 pounds on a bench press. You're
Right.
like it's intimidating.
Right.
So like there's a confidence issue. So like my point is though, is on the other side of that, there's a lot of life to live. Like the life that you are in doesn't have to be solely this one thing. Like the equivalent I always make is like, just because you went to college to be like, I don't know, an economics major doesn't mean you have to be an economics person for your entire life. You can change your
Right.
career. You can do something different. Like there's choices to be made, and there's and once you make the choice, there's a decision on the other side of it. So if you go, hey man, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired, great. Now, like, why? Why are you sick and tired? Like, you got to have this resolve, because trust me, it's going to get tested when you're like throwing up because you haven't worked out ever, or you have a headache, or you're not sleeping good, or whatever. Your body goes through these changes. You're going to need this justification. So, that's not to scare anybody away, but like, you know, I'm also think people are unaware of how strong they are. People are strong. Like human
Yeah.
beings have been on this planet for a long time. We've evolved. We've been successful. Like we figured out how to do crazy shit, like land freaking helicopters on Mars, like make babies. Like we've been doing crazy stuff for a long time. People are capable of a lot more than they give themselves credit for. And sometimes all you
Right.
have to do is try. And it gets, by the way, fail fast, fail a lot, and then find that one thing that's like, oh, I found out how to be successful at this thing. Let me do that again. And then that success begets more success, which begets confidence, which is your point. And then I think you find going, all right, I have some momentum now. Well, the
Yeah.
momentum makes it a whole lot easier to keep going. So anyway, those are like
Yeah.
my personal pieces, but I also don't want to underplay actual health issues and things like that. I mean, I think a lot of that can be solved, but I have friends of mine on both sides, people that have had body image issues where they're too thin, body image issues where they're too big, and all in between. So
Right.
it's not as simple as just like eat better, get to the gym, you stupid. Like that doesn't work. You have to like be mindful.
Now, but there are some pillars, I would say, that are sort of like this is unnegotiable.
Sure.
Eating healthy, resting, doing some sort of exercise that allows that your body can actually put up with, where you're not going to break yourself in half.
Yep.
Because there's levels to it. Obviously, you weren't doing the same
Oh
type of
yeah.
workouts that you were doing 10 years ago.
No, absolutely not.
And so, but I know it brings up a good point, which is I personally think this is one of the main reasons why we have as many people that are in unhealthy lifestyle than we had before, which is what people would call essentially the snowflake generation. You might have heard of this term, might maybe not, but my generation has often been described as the snowflake generation.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and by people who are my parents' generation and so forth. But in a way, I can't even disagree because what I've seen with my own eyes, and I do think it comes to the point where what you said, and also what my dad said, which is this is going to be a decision you have to make for yourself. This isn't easy, but it's worth it. The problem that I see now is people making it seem like it's going to be a walk in the park or it's no big deal,
Yeah.
and sort of taking the magnitude from it. Even though, I mean, talking about the magnitude shouldn't scare people away. And that's what I think is happening where the marketing kicks in, where people don't want to talk about the struggles. They only want to talk about the pros of doing
Oh
this.
no,
You're gonna get the six pack. The
yeah,
girls
yeah.
are gonna love you. You're gonna be able to do all this cool stuff. But the bottom line is that I think we should be talking more about how hard it's gonna be, and that this is what you
Yeah,
should expect.
absolutely.
In my opinion, I think we're doing a huge disservice to people by just telling them what the end result looks like. And that's what I think, a big problem from social media now is people tend to see the final result.
Oh
The
yeah.
person with $1 million, the guy with the six-pack ripped abs, and, hence depression coming in such prevalent age for kids nowadays, but then also just in general across everybody's age groups. Have
Yeah.
you noticed because you told me your kids, your son's 7-11, you said?
Yep.
Have you noticed social media doing more damage than positivity in that age group, or what? How have you seen that?
A funny thing. So, like, well, for both of them are not on social media, thank God. I've been able to keep that away, and they don't have phones and things like that. But they watch YouTube videos. There's YouTubers out there that they follow, which is fine. I think the thing that I've had to explain to them is, YouTube to them is the same way TV was for me growing up, right? You put a channel on, you watch it or whatever. I think the hard part is when you're watching people in real people, air quotes, like do what they appear to be real things, you somehow like connect the dots that these are like, this is how people are. And I'm like, and so having to explain to them that, like, why are they doing these things? What is the intent? I'm all for like entertainment. I'm cool with that, but also going, the reason people are prevalent to like, to propaganda in any form, marketing, advertising, whatever, is because they're just like they're not being mindful of the reasons why someone is trying to tell them something, or somebody's trying to be sold on something or whatever. So I'm like, hey, just FYI, these guys are putting on an act. These guys might be real actors, but you have to connect the dots. Just because you see this person doesn't mean that they're actually this person that they're portraying. Like, so you have to like disconnect those two worlds. And I said, as long as you understand that, that's fine. But the moment, and that's the hard part, right? It's a little bit easier for my 11-year-old, my 7-year-old. It's like, we are very cautious about what he's exposed to. But to your point, like, I also volunteer a lot with high school kids and things like that. And 100%, as they get age, teenagers, as they get older, I mean, the influence that happens on their life through social media, the bombardment they get, the inability to turn it off, or if they're not part of it, they're, part of the solution, you're part of the problem. Like it's hard. It's really hard. And I can't say that I have a good answer. I'm not participative in it. Like I shut down Facebook during like the pandemic. I was like, I'm done. Like this was not doing anybody any good whatsoever. And everybody's got an opinion, and I like, I'm good, man. I'm going to go over here. I'm not very much with drama in the first place. Like I don't deal with workplace drama or people's drama. And I always use this example. Like, I mean, like, look, if I lived in the middle of the woods in Montana with no internet, would any of this matter? Kind of. That's always like my gauge. And I'm like, well, yes, cool. Then I should really be thinking about it. No, like if it's just like I'm reading an article about someone else's life, I'm like, cool, that's cool. But like, I don't have to take that on myself. And I think that's the hardest thing, is compartmentalizing how they interact with other people through things like social media. To your point, it's always the best shot. Like I've never had a 6-pack of abs in my entire life. Does that mean I'm not fit? No. But by all means, the entire fitness industry is depicted as, unless you have a 6-pack, therefore you're not successful. Like, okay, let's go run an obstacle course race. See how you do. That's how I look at it. But that doesn't mean like I'm right and they're wrong. It's just like I'm being sold on this glamour thing, and I don't. And it's hard to get over. But yeah, to your point, like the pillars of fitness, I honestly think are, I think just challenging yourself. Like I think, like I said, people are convinced that things are so hard, and I'm like, man, your mental capacity is so much further than your physical capacity. Like, or is like your brain gives up before your body will. Like you got to have that resolve. David Goggins talks about this all the time. I love listening to. If you need a little like inspiration to get out on a run, put a little Goggins in, you'll be like, man, I crushed 15 miles today. But like, stay hard. But it's, I love people like that. His book, by the way, if anybody's not read Can't Hurt Me or listen to his audible, like it's unbelievable. His like biography. I mean, seriously.
But
unbelievable book. The book is amazing. I've read it twice because it was so ridiculous. And you go, okay, I'm inspired. I've got to go do something crazy. Like it's a perfect book for that. But I mean, people just, regardless of situation. I mean, I've been on Spartan races. This will give you like, there's a guy that I've met on course a few times. The guy literally has no legs. He's in a wheelchair. And the first time I came across him, I was racing in Seattle in April of 2019. It was just raining cats and dogs, muddy. We're at this equestrian center on the hills. And here's this guy literally pushing himself with his hands, and he's dragging by a chain his wheelchair up a mountain. And I was like, That is mental resolve. That is, I
Savage.
can like just, and it didn't matter that it took him all day to do this race when I have legs and he doesn't. I've seen like vets that have been wounded that are missing a leg or an arm or whatever get over these obstacles. They've trekked through the water. Like I've seen people that have had, like, there was one woman who had some like COPD or something like that, and she had a full O2 pack, like with trekking poles, going through one of those courses just to be like, I'm going to do this thing. I set out this goal to challenge. I'm going to get over it. And like, they make it to the end. They didn't die. They didn't tap. I mean, it might suck, but I mean,
Right.
like, at the end of the day, what do you remember? The victory or the pain? You remember the victory. You don't remember the pain. The pain just fleets. It's there and it's gone the next day or 2 days later, or a week later. It just vanishes. But you remember, man, I came to that finish line. I remember that feeling of success. And that's the thing to me, where when people go, I'm on the couch, I don't know how to get started. I'm like, man, just go out for a walk. The
Yeah.
walking sucks. Yeah, walking does suck if you've not walked before. Your body just likes homeostasis. You got to like push it. But
Yeah.
eating well, organic foods, if you can afford them, I mean, just real foods, if, just generally speaking, like if you can name the food, you can eat it, like clean water, like just basics. Like, our human beings were put on this earth not to eat like Oreo cookies. Like, not that Oreos
Right.
aren't delicious, but I'm like, that wasn't the point, man. We were hunter gatherers and like,
Yeah.
farmers and stuff. I'm like, I feel like we overcomplicate it sometimes, just to be honest with you. I think all of the trends in fitness are like, hey man, like you got to do these 700 things. I'm like, at the
No.
beginning,
Yeah.
just walking to the start line
Yeah.
and starting across the start line is all you need to do.
But you're right, though. I mean, I hate to keep referencing the last episodes, but with my dad, we had a whole sequence talking about how you have to go through all that clutter to find out that it's a lot simpler than everybody else is telling you that it is.
Yes.
And so you got the 10 days, you got a six pack abs, you got in 30 days, lose half your body weight.
Right.
And it's all these marketing jingles, because I'm in marketing. I know what they're doing. Like, it
Yeah. Yeah.
sounds good. 10 pounds in 10 days, all that good stuff. And so
Yep.
I guess in the name of simplifying things, which I'm a big believer in that, in the last 3-4 years, I've made it a purpose to simplify my life and live more of a minimalistic lifestyle. So
That's great.
just across the board on everything, on what I eat, how many clothes I have available to pick from, how many things I'm purchasing that are small purchases to big purchases. And so do you have any insights on some, well, I'll give a little background. I know you're the person who introduced me to Dave Asprey
Yeah.
back in the day. I'm sure you probably still, you guys seem like you were good friends. And I've seen him in plenty of podcasts. I mean, he's all over the place. He's
Yep. Yep.
busy. And his whole brand is about essentially utilizing your brain to a more efficient manner, whatever the product is. I feel like you have partaken in maybe not a lot of his products, but I knew you were drinking some bulletproof coffee back in the day.
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
you
I mean,
still?
no. Yeah. So I've had the great pleasure of meeting Dave a couple times. He's just a very unique human being who's got, he's such a, uh, there's different people that do different things in this world, and he's just, he's got his path and he's walking it and he's showing people how to do what he does, which I think is great. But yeah, like I'm a big fan of the bulletproof coffee. I mean, the idea, and I remember, friend, I'm like, I've hung out with Sean T a couple times, and he had this thing years ago where Abel James, who did the Wild Diet, by the way, like showed him like about putting butter in his coffee, and it was like, butter in your coffee? Like, well, this is blasphemy, like just
Right.
bananas. And I'm like, this idea that like these beverages can have value to you versus, a 1,000-calorie sugary drink. Like, you can change the way you consume these things, and it helps your brain operate better, and it helps your body operate better. And you can do this through like little biohacks, or, little changes in how you think of things, and it's like the technology point of view, right? Like, hey, like, nobody wants to go to the edit menu, copy, back to the edit menu, paste, like that. You use keystrokes, right? You use shortcuts.
Right.
Life is all about being able to intersect and do shortcuts as well. So yeah, bulletproof coffee, and I still do to this day. It's been 5 or 6 years now, but I've also done a bunch of other things from other people too, and his advice and others, and you kind of just find what works for you. Some people can do things better than others. Yeah.
And so is is that one of your top hacks to get you mentally right to start doing the physical work and get in that vibe? Because I have some that I can share, but I'm curious to see if you have a some sort of a routine to get you in that mentality of
Oh
just
man.
getting shit done.
So I think, for me,
Or are you
it's
still watching the same video from
no, I know. I wish. That's actually funny you said that. The same one mindset video. No, it depends what I'm doing, but like to me, like I'm a creature of habits. I have routines. Hydration is a big one. Like, I mean, I get up in the morning and I actually, instead of just pounding water, I do hydrogen water. I do a hydrogen tablets. It helps with inflammation. That's just me, right? Like that, but there's a lot of these little like stacks. I'm all about getting some good stretches in first thing in the morning for like not more than 5 minutes, just like touch your toes and back and just expanding your breath, getting outside if you can, get some sunlight and get some stimulation to your eyes. But then like, and I've got some, like, it's all about minerals for me. I have like challenges of maintaining minerals in my body. That's just my problem. So I'm always like, get some like seawater kind of stuff with calcium, magnesium, salts, things like that are just like help light me up. But if it's like, hey, I got a presentation coming up or I've got a race coming up and I just need to be like laser focused, mushroom coffee is great. Like a lot of times I'll do like bulletproof mushroom coffee combo because that helps with like
going on there.
Yeah, like that cognitive ability. There is some like mitochondrial stimulant stuff that Bulletproof's come out with and other brands have that help just like get those mitochondria just like fire in. A little caffeine dose never hurts anybody, especially if you're not like, I usually drink decaf because when I want that caffeine to work, I don't want to be like, it actually kicks in. I don't need a ton of it. I just need a little bit of it. But yeah, like those are like some of the basic things first thing in the morning. I mean, I take a number of supplements because of issues I have health wise or things I'm trying to fill in gaps for, but that's like a unique biology thing.
Right.
But yeah, and then it's like trying to walk, balancing my weight, my food intake. Like a lot of times I intermittent fast. I've intermittent fast for years. And that it's so funny to like, I used to be a hangry guy. Like I used to like get on an airplane, travel for work, be upgraded to first class or some shit. And it's like me, and I'm like freaking out. And there's a guy next to me with a bagel and cream cheese. And then, like I started intermittent fasting and be able to separate like hunger from my behavior, right? Taking those two worlds. So I get on an airplane now and I'm like, whatever, 6-hour flight, no problem. I got some water or maybe an avocado or something like that. And I'm still sitting next to the guy with the bagel and the cream cheese. And I'm like, well, what kind of bad decisions are you making today with that shit that you're eating, man? Like you get back to the point about people making decisions. I'm like, there are lots of people in powers of companies or in their family or whatever that are just unprepared for life and they're scrounging for whatever food they can find in an airport or at a convenience store or whatever. And they're just making bad choices. I'm like, dude, that food is what connects you to your brain. Like it's energizing your body and energizing your heart. Like, I don't know, man. Like who's like, you never saw Tony Robbins scarfing down 16 donuts. Like the guys like takes, all these pioneers of inspiration, Goggins included. They don't necessarily eat flawlessly, but they eat, there's a pattern to what they eat. And it's definitely not whatever is available to them at like, at an airport.
Whatever time.
Yeah. And so like, I think being methodical about that approach is always interesting. I'm always like joking, like, okay, what CEO am I sitting next to and what is he eating? Because I want to know like what kind of influence food has on the decisions they're going to make today, because it happens, what kind of shitty sleep they got, crossing time zones, what kind of decision you're going to try to make. It's like a doctor, right? Hey, have you been awake for 36 hours doing the most complicated spinal surgery ever? Or, oh no, man, I got a great night's sleep. I'm ready to rock. I got steady hands for you. Like, I'm like, hey, if you're going to be touching my brain with a scalpel, I hope you slept good last night. I hope you ate a good meal, like that kind of stuff.
Right. Well, I'm not surprised you do intermittent fasting. I think, I've done intermittent fasting as well for about 4 or 5 years now. I purposely didn't eat before our interview. And for me on a personal level, it works wonders. And I think it's what you said earlier in regards to like when you're sitting in the plane and somebody's eating. we've been
Yes.
conditioned to just eat throughout the day.
Oh yeah,
And
grazing, just grazing,
yeah,
grazing, grazing all
just
day long.
like obviously your obvious 3 meals of the day. Can't forget breakfast is the most important meal of the day, yada, yada, yada. Don't forget the snack as long as it's
Yep.
healthy. And, sure, on a personal level, depending on what circumstances, like you said, you're dealing with your health and in some very specific situations, you can't necessarily do things like intermittent fasting. But research has shown that if you lower the calories that you intake across your life, you will live longer. Now, there's a thin line. You don't want to not eat anything.
Right.
But I've come to
Yeah.
find out kind of what you said, which is the first few times you're mentally sort of shook. Yeah, your body keeps telling you, dude, this is when you eat. This is when you eat. You should eat. Everybody's eating right now. You should eat.
Right.
Once you actually get past that day or the first couple of days, and you realize you're not only are you still walking and feeling alive, you're actually sharper. You're mentally way more acute. And the farther I got into intermittent fasting, the easier it became to notice that as soon as I went for the meal, suddenly my body just started like shut down. Like it's time for a nap. I'm starting to yawn. I'm not really as in tune with the conversations going on around me.
Yep.
And that's not to say that any food will do that to you, but I do find it interesting how, once again, going back to simplifying things, it's a lot simpler when you eat less food in a day. And when you find out that that actually not only is better on your bank account, also better for your health, you're more productive at work. In some ways, you almost wonder, why were we being fed all this other information? Well, it's called marketing. People are trying to sell you stuff.
Oh
They want
yeah.
you to buy the breakfast. They want you to have those snacks throughout the day. They want you. And
Well,
so, yeah, go for it.
I was just gonna say it's funny because I mean the word break breakfast. I mean it's break fast. I mean there was this cultural phenomenon going back, especially like in that farming, the agricultural society we used to have, where you'd go to bed at like 7 o'clock. You had dinner when it got dark, right? And then you would wake up and when it got sunlight. So you'd have a 12, 13 hour fast. Well, if you look at
Right.
intermittent fasting, it's 12 to 16 hours. The challenge
Right.
is a lot of people go, hey man, I was watching TV, it's 9, 10 o'clock, I'm having a snack, and then they get up at 6. And I'm like, dude, like 7, your body isn't even done digesting the food from the last thing you ate, and you're trying to put
Yeah.
more food in there. And then that compounds over time. That's like legitimately the challenge. It's not that like, and then of course it's what your choice is, right? I mean, a lot of people just pound sugary coffee first thing in the morning, like I'm good to go, rock out. And they're not even getting nutrients. They haven't had a glass of water. They're having a soda or something like that. So
Yeah.
like, I think the fat, and then of course you're talking about all the things that happen with fasting and talk about hunter gatherers that would like, hey man, I went out and I killed a lion, then I would feast, and then they would sleep for like 2 solid days to like repair all the things in their body because they might not eat again for 4 or 5 days. But apparently, like the way our bodies are designed, everybody thinks that if I don't eat, you're just going to fall apart and die. When in fact, what you're finding out is like, well, if that were true, we would never have survived the hunt because you would be like ridiculously like incapable of hunting for an animal after 4 days of not eating, right? Like all these things turn on that allow you to be sharper in that 3-4 day window. And you go, oh, I don't feel hunger. I can like adapt. My eyes can do things. My brain functions differently. I'm now running off of ketones instead of like glucose. Like the whole thing shifts. And then you go, I got the lion. Now we're eating, and we're eating good. We're eating like kings for 2 days.
Celebration
and then you
now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But that hunt, that feasting and fasting thing. There's a guy that I listen to now. He's got a great book about like a change in the way we eat. His name's Joel Green. He has a book called The Immunity Code, and he talks about like how our immune system is tuned and how like there's research to basically say that like it's not even day-to-day meals, it's the 2-day patterns actually. So it's like a 48-hour window of eating that actually contributes to one another, and it's the meal before the one you're having and the one you're having after. All three of those, the n -1 and the n+1 are all related to one another. So just being able to use science to help manage your internal organs, because again, you just a certain point you get old and then you go, I want to be fit, but then you want to age gracefully. And that's that aging gracefully thing. I think that people, when they get into their 40s and 50s, are like, okay, it's cool that I'm in good shape, but I want to live to be 100, not 65. Like you don't want to burn that candle out so fast. And I think there's a lot that goes into that too. So anyway, we can spend another hour talking about fitness.
Yeah, no, I mean, I was just looking at the clock here, and it looks
we've been burning it Joe Rogan style today.
We're coming at the top of the hour. Honestly, it's been like this with every episode, and I love it because you guys have all been killer guests. And I mean, as any closing comments, because I think we'll probably close here right now.
No, man, I just thank you so much for the opportunity. I mean, I appreciate the fact that we got to go all over the place on it, and for all the work I do at Microsoft. I mean, all the way through Spartan, all the way to fitness, and the only thing next time we'll talk about aliens after they have the Pentagon files come out. So we'll save that for another episode.
We'll do it. Well, awesome, man. Well, actually, let's do this. Any links where people can keep up with your work?
So,
I mean, whatever it is that you want them to find you.
Yeah, I mean, from a Microsoft perspective, I mean, Hololens.com is where people can find all our stuff, and that's. I mean, for me on the technology side, that's where all the updates are for Hololens, and that's where I would spend a lot of time. And if anybody's ever interested in obstacle course racing, there's a bunch of them. But Spartan.com is fun out there, and then let's see, like what else did we mention? Like Bulletproof. For Dave Asprey and Joel Green, you can look him in. Goggins, with the Can't Hurt Me book. I mean, you can find all those places anywhere.
I'll try to find the links and put them in the description.
Yeah.
Okay.
But no, dude, thank you for the opportunity. It was awesome to catch up with you, Lucas. Seriously.
Yeah, man, it was a really good time, and thanks for coming out. And that's it for it today, guys. It's another great episode, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching this episode from Appropriate Culture. If you want to watch other episodes, make sure to make your way to appropriateculture.com. You can also hang out with us in other social media platforms. They're all in the link in the description. And aside from that, if you want to listen to the podcast on other platforms like Audible, Spotify, any of those, you can also find us there as well. Link in the description. Take it easy, guys. Have a good day.